Welcome back to Crystal Clear. I'm Ultra Fox, and another Thursday means another batch of press release images to break down. Now, this week we only have 2 pictures, one from each episode, and no clip to break down. And the journalist who distributed the material last week, Roland Bishop, confirmed that at this current point in time, Cartoon Network has not sent over anything else to show. And I waited around this morning for the usual time, nothing came around, so it appears we only have these to work with. So just to quickly run through the episode descriptions, this Friday we have Together Forever at 7 o'clock. With the synopsis, Connie has a very clear vision of her future, and Steven wants to make sure he's a part of it. And the other episode is Growing Pains. With the synopsis, Steven sees a doctor for the first time. I like how the description for Together Forever is kind of a bit more detailed than usual, yet immensely ominous, with Steven wanting to make sure he's a part of it. Whereas with Growing Pains, it's super vague, but just as ominous, because why would Steven need to see a doctor? I imagine the hybrid of a diamond does not need a physical checkup. Well, let's take a look at these 2 images and try to piece together what's going on. Of course, spoiler warning, if you do not want to know any potential information on upcoming episodes of Steven Universe Future, please click off now. With all that said, let's dive in. So first things first, we have Together Forever, with a very lighthearted, feel-good, and goofy frame. Like, I'm laughing at it, but it's more like cheerful giggles. Steven leaping in the air with a bag in hand. Now, judging by his expression, his pose, and the reaction of the townies around him, it seems pretty clear that Steven will be singing some sort of song. It could be a new song, as I'm sure we all want a decent catalog for a Steven Universe Future soundtrack down the road, but the theory I favor the most, which was a suggestion from a Twitter mutual of mine, is that Steven will be singing a reprise of For Just One Day Let's Only Think About Love, which makes perfect sense. The lyrics, there's an awful lot of awful things we could be thinking of, all of the awful things Steven could be thinking of in relation to his mental state and where he's at in life, but for just today, he's only going to think about love, his love for Connie, and his determination to make sure they have a future together. And I'm assuming the bag in his hand will be full of stuff for his date with Connie: jam, biscuits, flowers, juice. Granted, I assume flowers would be sticking out of that bag if they were in there. And of course, we can assume Steven can just buy a bouquet elsewhere or just go to his diamond base. It doubles as a greenhouse, essentially. Still, it's great to see more of Beach City. We've pretty much been relegated to the boardwalk for most of the show's run, so anytime we get a glimpse of more, I can't help but to get hype. I don't know what to tell y'all. I'm pleased by the smallest of details. Now, to wrap up my thoughts on a possible return reprise of For Just One Day Let's Only Think About Love, as I stated before in my breakdown for Ruby and Sapphire's new forms, we'll likely see the footage from that bumper of Garnet unfusing, as Steven tries to find one of the gems to talk to for advice, but no one's around, which drives the wedge even further, something that will come into play down the road. But he does manage to catch Garnet for a quick second, and that will plant the seed for not only Steven's idea of any possible romantic gestures, but perhaps the idea, going off the episode title, that he and Connie can become a permafusion, becoming Stefani forever, being together forever, which is a variation of a scenario I theorized about a few months ago. This episode is already upsetting me, however, just because, look at this still. The promo already shows us how this ends. And I'll reiterate what I've said before, I don't believe Steven and Connie are going to cut ties. I just believe Steven's going to dig a deeper hole for himself and convince himself that things are awful between him and Connie because of what he does in this episode. And even if it's a little off-putting, it won't drive Connie away for good. But switching gears to Growing Pains, I truly believe that this could be the start to Steven's corruption, or at least the proper setup for this storyline, as we have a still of Steven, glowing pink, having an x-ray done for his body. Now, I want to give props to Kitten Sneeze, because when initially discussing these new images with friends, she pointed out that Steven is in the standard position for an x-ray, and that the result of this x-ray would be something along the lines of this, which would be Steven's spine and stomach. Now, what I believe is going on in this picture is that Growing Pains will feature Steven's powers will begin to fluctuate, maybe he'll begin to change in size, as he does look kind of younger in this still, and as the homie Bismuth, or Bizernith, pointed out, Steven's sleeves in this promotional image covers his entire arms, whereas they're short-sleeved in the snippet of this episode from the trailer. And with the title Growing Pains, it makes sense that if his powers and abilities are on the fritz, his shapeshifting in size, his age, could be fluctuating. And as a result, Steven can't even control his pink form any longer. It could just come and go at this point. But going back to the X-ray, with it being his stomach, I think because of Steven's pink form and powers being on the fritz, he'll want to have his gem inspected. Yeah, perhaps it may not have any visible damage on the outside, but on the inside of Steven's body, the sharp edge of his gemstone, it's possible there could have been some sustained damage from there, which will take us to a scene that mirrors the beginning of Volleyball, which I now believe to be foreshadowing, considering Steven was in a doctor getup. Steven will try to check out what's wrong with him, try to get himself fixed. He's not talking to the gems about it because he's kind of avoiding having a talk with them, something we know will lead to an explosive intervention. And once he's acted doctor, once he gets the checkup, once he gets the X-ray, Steven will learn, much like with Volleyball Scar, his gemstone is completely fine, so what's affecting his powers and causing him to grow out of control is completely psychological. Again, much like with Volleyball. Of course, Steven's powers are tied to his emotions, so we kind of already figured this out, and we can assume the doctor will ask Steven, well, has anything been bothering you? Perhaps you don't have any physical trauma, but is there any emotional, psychological trauma? Which will lead to the scene in both the trailer and repeated in Cartoon Network's bumpers of Steven recounting the events of Diamond Days. Again, I'm pretty sold on the idea that we are going to see the beginning stages of his corruption. Perhaps it just starts with size changes, and that can explain his ripped clothes while he's on FaceTime with Connie. But it'll only continue to spiral over the upcoming episodes until we reach the point where Steven loses complete control. But we have more theories on upcoming episodes on the way, so please stay tuned and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Turning on notifications actually notifies you when we upload a video, and we have a great variety of cartoon content beyond Steven Universe. But as always, these are just my thoughts and I want to hear yours. What do you think? Which episode are you looking forward to the most? And what is your personal interpretation of these frames? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below or tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids. And for more of my own thoughts, you can find me at OstricFox. We're also on Instagram. Help the Roundtable grow by either becoming a member of this channel or supporting us over at Patreon. Link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please store to like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. OstricFox, signing out.